So let's start today's webinar. At the outset, good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of CUTS and Indranil, I welcome you all to today's webinar. Before going into the details of the project and the subject that we are going to cover in the webinar, uh, I would like to give a brief about CUTS. So as CUTS, we are international non-profit uh, think tank working on mostly policy advocacy. The issues are trade and regional integration, competition and economic regulation, consumer empowerment, good governance, and all those. Uh, with regard to trade and regional integration, CUTS has been closely working in the eastern and northeastern India, mostly looking at how this region could be better integrated with our neighboring countries like Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar. Coming to India-Bangladesh relations, we have been, working a lot on the infrastructure to explore the infrastructure deficits, the procedures that need to be addressed, and all. But what we really felt is there is a need to establish greater people-to-people connectivity, uh, between these countries, especially between India and Bangladesh, and that we have a common history. Now, when we are talking about people-to-people connectivity, that is where the border hearts, they can play a very important role. We already have 4 border huts, and CUTS has been working since 2014 on the India-Bangladesh border huts, how what needs to be done to upscale them, to make them sustainable. Uh, and what we have really found is these border huts were really a game changer when it comes to, because we have seen where the places where these border huts have come up, there has been a decline in informal trade. There has been a lot of livelihood opportunities have come up at the local level, especially in the border areas, which are quite distant. They lack connectivity, so they face a lot of socio-economic and geopolitical problems. And this is where the border huts can play a very important role. As I already said, other than reducing reduction in informal trade, the border huts have also led to women empowerment. They have created income opportunities for women, both as vendors and as vendees, because we have seen women who are purchasing from the huts and then selling them at a substantial at a marginal higher price in the local market. But what is happening is they are getting some income, and with that income they are purchasing items that they want. They don't have to depend on their families for the money. So without any further ado, uh, this is the second webinar that we are doing, and this is under a project where we are looking at how the India-Bangladesh border hearts can increase people-to-people, enhance people-to-people connectivity. And this project has been supported by uh, FCDO, which is earlier the DFID. Uh, and Under this project, we did an extensive research in 16 locations. We are in the process of finalizing the research report, but what we did in the meantime, there are experts in this domain, and we had requested them to come up with different briefing papers on different themes. And what we are doing is through these webinars, we are disseminating those the key findings from those briefing papers and also to have your inputs on which are the areas we should also focus in the as a way forward. So, I mean, I'd stop here rather, and today we have with us Professor Indranil Bose. He's from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, and he will be moderating the session. Uh, we also have Professor Haque Enamul Haque. He's a professor of economics from East West University, Dhaka. He will be talking on a briefing paper that he developed on how these border Haats can play an important role, in creating a cultural and a socio-cultural aspect of these border Haats. That is something he will be talking on. We next on the panel we have Dr. Joyeeta Bhattacharjee. She is a senior fellow from Observer Research Foundation, New Delhi. She will be talking on how the border Haats have helped in better border management. We also have with us our colleague Bijaya Roy. She is a senior research associate, and she co-authored with Professor Bose on a briefing paper which mostly looks at how how to consider the border Haats in a post-COVID era. With these, let me request Professor Indranil Bose to please, moderate the panel. Thank you. Indranil?
Thank you so much, Orno.
Oh.
A very good afternoon and my greetings to all my fellow panelists and participants. I must begin by expressing my gratitude to CUTS International for giving me the opportunity to be associated with many of the studies, and Border Haats is one of them. And I think, therefore, it is in the fitness of things that I begin with these words of gratitude to the organization which has made this study possible. Talking about Border Haats, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure I shall be forgiven if I begin by drawing from John Lennon's classic song Imagine, where he sings out, "Imagine there is no country. Imagine all the people living life in peace." Well, this is so true in the case of India and Bangladesh, because there was a time when they were not separate countries. As one delves into the history of the two nations, one actually encounters two communities inhabiting geographically contiguous areas. They shared languages and dialects, lifestyles and food habits, gods and goddesses, and customs and traditions through history. They cultivated adjacent lands, fished at the same ponds, and shared their recipes along with other resources of the region. And after years of such togetherness and generations of coexistence, a piece of political engineering that we call a border ran through their lives, splitting families and friends, relatives and neighbors. The Border Haat, more than anything else, is an opportunity for these split souls to re-engage and reconnect, to rekindle and revive sentiments and feelings that have been trampled upon by forces quite alien to them. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, Border Haats were conceived as rough and ready markets in order to enable the local people from both the countries to trade in the local produce and indigenous products, ranging from vegetables and fruits to aluminium and plastic products. The study on Border Haats by CUTS International, and I'm sure the report is widely circulated, there are numerous advantages that these Haats have brought into the lives of inhabitants residing in these remote regions. They have created and buttressed livelihood opportunities. Women, otherwise saddled with domestic responsibilities, are finding ways to make incomes which they are unable to invest in health and education, and in the process they are able to raise their living standards. Informal trade has also declined as a result of the creation of employment opportunities and the permission granted for trade in commodities to border Haats, such trade that was earlier done through informal and often risky channels. This has also lessened out-migration by offering livelihood opportunities to local residents. But when you look at border Haats from the perspective of the people, you cannot help but noting the tremendous contribution of border Haats towards socialization and cultural exchange between people on the two sides of the border. Ages back, Aristotle had harped on the human being as a social animal. The fact that people are keen to reconnect and strengthen their bonds across the border that separates them is borne by instances like the Milan Mela, which is a fair jointly organized by India and Bangladesh once a year to the north of West Bengal. And this fair enables Bangladeshis and Indians to meet their relatives and friends across the barbed wire fencing. But what is striking is that the fervor that is discernible at the Milan Mela is also echoed and reflected in scenes of reunion at border Haats. You have such gratifying sights. If you visit the border Haats, you often come across such gratifying sights as a mother reuniting with her daughter after decades, or two friends reconnecting with memories of their fathers who had embraced each other in friendship. These border Haats have facilitated people-to-people connect that will cement the bonds of friendship between India and Bangladesh in real and meaningful ways. I'm happy to recall what Honorable Member of Parliament, respected Shirin Akhter said. I'm so glad you are here in our midst today, ma'am. You had said at a conference on border Haats in Guwahati in 2017 that border Haats have achieved more in strengthening friendship between India and Bangladesh than has been possible on part of diplomatic officials and ministers through conferences and meetings. The restoration of such goodwill may well be a message that both India and Bangladesh may hold out to the world at a time when a global pandemic is raging. The pandemic, you will agree, is in good measure a manifestation of the lack of goodwill that has become discernible among several countries. And it has become increasingly clear that economic progress is rendered futile in the absence of goodwill and good intent that any community, whether of nations or of people, must harbor. I think we often lose sight of basic human concerns in our quest for political ambitions. In respect of border Haats, let us be mindful that we are talking about people, poor and marginalized, people dwelling in remote border regions and who have to cope with several challenges like dearth of livelihood opportunities and dearth of connectivity and communication channels. It has been seen that more underdeveloped border areas more are they vulnerable and prone to harbor illegal activities, which only adds to the insecurity of such remote regions. The Government of India is therefore articulating a renewed approach to border management through its Border Area Development Program, which addresses special development needs of the people living in remote and inaccessible areas near the international border. Border Haats are therefore meant to facilitate these poor and marginalized people so that they can cope with the dilemmas of life and living. The study on border Haats by Cuts International has eloquently and elaborately outlined, on the basis of empirical evidence, the benefits accruing from the institution. But what needs to be reiterated is that border Haats are pregnant with a lot of promise. Not only can they emerge as hubs of increasing economic activity, they can also serve as forums of cultural exchange. They can serve as vital links for strengthening cross-border value chains and function as instruments of peace, security, stability, and prosperity in the border regions. It is therefore imperative to reopen Border Haats and indicate all those protocols which ought to be followed so that the requirements of health and hygiene remain uncompromised. For it appears that the pandemic is not pitted for a swift exit as of now, but to keep border huts closed indefinitely in view of that may well amount to throwing the baby with the bathwater. Professor Enamul Haque's paper carries with it the aroma and the fragrance of beautiful tales of communion and friendship that have persisted between neighbors through history. The paper envisages border huts as centers for cultural exchange, and I take this opportunity to request Professor Haque to share his thoughts on border huts with us now. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bose. This is my opportunity, a good opportunity for me to speak in front of all of you. This is, as I think you have eloquently described the scene for this discussion. As I engaged in this particular work, it was looking at the border huts and see whether how much it has facilitated the people-to-people connectivity. That was the primary objective of my research and looking into it. I just like what you have done, I have also gone through the history and realized that this was a border. There was no border before the partition of 1947. People never thought about that this is a border. In fact, the border, which was very interestingly, I have quoted it, that it was a drawing by Radcliffe without visiting the places, without visiting the people. And it has changed the front of the houses. In other words, the borders which was previously looking at one side, the moment the border is imposed, they started looking at the other side. The front became the back and the back became the front. That is how border has changed the life of the people. Now, in the history of Bangladesh and India, after 1947, if you look carefully, it was a soft border. I don't think people, not my generation, the generation before, did not even see the border as strongly prior to 1965. So what I understood that after 1965, the Bangladesh and Indian border, which was within East Pakistan, after the 65 war, there was a hard border. It was at that time, probably the people realized that we are living in two different countries. Prior to that, they could travel from each other. There was it's like more of a current Europe prior to that, that you could travel across the border without thinking of crossing, having a visa and everything. So 1965 was one of the first turning point of the history. And it has created, I would say it has changed the front of the houses. In other words, the backyard became the front. The people who are looking at the Kolkata as a bigger market started looking at Dhaka as a bigger market. From Bangladesh side, I'm just giving an example. And that animosity over time ingrained, and there was both because of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh was part of East Pakistan, created a kind of mistrust, and the border became a zone of conflict rather than a zone of friendship. So that is an historical starting point. It was 1971 during our liberation wars. It started again. It was at that time the border became open. And it was from the atrocities people were trying to save. And it was, again, the border that opened up for us. And people realized, okay, this is almost like another same continent. We will share in the same culture. People across the border, having both religion, Muslims and Hindus on both sides, realized that, okay, we have friends on the other side. So 1971 was an interesting turning point. However, when I look into this, what I see the turning point change again. From friendship, from a same country to a conflict zone at the border in 65, back in 1971. And then in 74, things have changed when there was famine in Bangladesh. And when during the famine, again, if you look carefully, things have changed. And what is changed basically, there was a migration of people from Bangladesh side, and there was obviously people were looking at Bangladesh, and the Indian government started realizing that we need to do something on the border. And the turning point turned back again in 1986 when the first time Indian government realized, decided to open to the barbed wire. That was an interesting turning point. It was not only a hard turning point, it's a border with barbed wire, and that was the beginning of a real separation between houses, between cultures. So people maybe, there are people on this side, they are married to the people on the other side, same village, but now they are not, they're totally separated. And that separation became stronger and stronger over time. I think it was until 2014. And mind you, even though India shares border with China, India shares border with Nepal, with Bhutan, with Pakistan, Myanmar, but Bangladesh has the largest border with India. The longest border India has with anyone is with Bangladesh. So it's a surprising fact that most people don't see it, that we have the longest border with India and surrounded by almost 5 different provinces, and they are all different languages. The biggest challenge that happened after particularly with the partition that I see is that the borders which were at the front to the market now become the back to their original market, means the new markets, which is the center of the country, so became a backward area. So the economic conditions of these people became backward. Connectivity, whatever was done on the border, was not in the interest of people, but in the interest of retaining the separation and doing this. More interestingly, unlike many other countries, we also have a border with no man's land. Very interesting. And that land, even though it's no man's land, but it's not no man's land, there's ownership. And all the fences were done, interestingly, outside the no man's land. Interestingly, what it means that the no man's land, which is a land of someone else, either a Bangladeshi or an Indian, both sides, they had to cross that barbed wire to cultivate that. So it's very interesting. So when this study, when I found out that some people realized that after the barbed wire, after the conflict that has happened, these border people were almost like a police 24 hours, they were police. So the conflict, the mistrust continuously grew over time. I think the biggest change that has happened after in the recent past is when 2011, when the two governments, Bangladesh and Indian government, agreed on Border Haats. To me, that was the biggest turning point that has happened. The objective apparently was to give access, the bordering people, remote people now, access to the markets. Interestingly, on one side, in some cases, Bangladesh is probably the biggest market from some of the bordering production region. In some cases, India is also the market. So it depends on the product we're looking at. Taking an example, and this was studied already by other teams. I'm not going to go into there. But this opening up of the border created an opportunity, and I have seen shown with example in my study that a girl was married. She was on the other side of the border. After the fence was created, she could not come back. Prior to that, she could. Now, after 14, 20 years, she eventually met her mother in the Border Haats. So it created, and this is something that it's like a separating, same house into two different parts. And some cases we have seen people, used to speak from on the no man's land area, from the one side of the border, shouting at each other because there are families on the other side. So Border Haat actually created that opportunity of connectivity. And I think over that, the way I see it, is also created trust. Now, border area could be either become a conflict zone, or it could be a friendship zone. And it depends on the policy of the government how to create that zone. If you create a mistrust among the people in the border area, it will always remain as a conflict zone. And having, as I said, like Bangladesh, the longest border with India, if you think carefully, is a country and it's a culture on both sides, almost very similar culture. I was even talking to, so in one cases, we're looking at Meghalaya, And there was a lady who said, okay, she's a Christian lady. And she said, I had never no idea prior to this border Haat that on the other side, people have a different language. Because for her, the border is so separate that she had no idea on the other side. And after the border Haat, she started counting Bangladeshi taka. She could greet a person and she could see that what she thought originally Bangladesh is a completely different culture, different group of people, everything different. No, that's not that much. You can trust them. So I think border Haat created that kind of an opportunity between people to trust each other. And given this particular scenario, I don't see border Haat as only exchange of goods and services. I also see our border Haat exchange of friendship. I also see border Haat as a exchange of, even learning languages. That, people on the other side has a one language, on this side has a different languages. So that languages are also, and also building trust. So as we go into the future, I believe this should be seen as a cultural exchange. And I also see that this also should create an opportunity for them. We were talking to, in one case, with a lady in Sunamganj border, where she said, look, from the other side of the border, the price of oranges are so high, whereas I cannot sell it because the nearest market from me is far away. Similarly, from Bangladesh side, they also see that on these products in the Indian border side is higher, so we can sell it more. So I'm giving this as a livelihood change, which is also help these people on both sides. And finally, if I look into this exercise that I have done, I realize that it is possible, and I think we should all dream for that day, when it will be a border with friendship. And in order to do this, is not just border Haat, we have to go beyond that border Haat. That's how I see it. And the three strategies that I recommended, number one, we should bring back the idea of family reunion pass. So there are family on both sides, and I think family reunion pass, it is easier for them to travel. Because if you ask them to get a passport, it's impossible for them to go to the Dhaka, so for example, in a Bangladeshi to come to Dhaka or nearest district and get a passport. These are very poor people living in the border, remotest villages, and asking them to travel to get passport and then the visa is too much of a work. So this one strategy, I think this 24-hour pass to visit families reunion, these are mostly on that. That is what I thought that would be interesting because it's not just these 11, 16 areas of border Haat. All across, this is the longest border between Bangladesh and India, this situation exists. I remember seeing one video on I think National Geographic, where they were showing half of the houses in Bangladesh and the other half is in India on the same family. That's how border was created, without really thinking that how this border was created, and without thinking this family is on both sides. The second important point, I think building trust is important, which I believe that is a tourism, cultural tourism. I myself traveled to Indian side several times on the Meghalaya region, for example. Beautiful tourist spot. Similarly, if you want to enjoy the beauty of some of the hills, you have to come to Bangladesh to see that. So interestingly, there are interest on both sides to travel across. So tourism is also a good example. And that could be organized tourism. I'm not talking about people crossing, but the organized tourism, people staying. There are one of the Asia's beautiful, most cleanest village on the other side of the border in Meghalaya. So there are markets that we can trade and we can use it. Religious tourism is another one that we can use it on both sides. And the third important point I thought, and this is an interesting one, that resource products are exchanged on both sides, but it's still unprocessed product. I think it is important that we can use no man's land in particular to bring in economic zone and investment into that area from both sides of the border. That will benefit local people in terms of jobs, give more value addition to this, and it will improve the friendship between Bangladesh and India. And borders, if you go travel across, as I said, if I've traveled from Netherlands to Belgium to France, you never see the border. That doesn't mean the country did not exist. But the country exists, and that kind of friendship and trust should be built. And I think Border has a good strategy to build that first step. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Haque. And it is now my request to Dr. Joyeeta Bhattacharjee to make a presentation. Her paper, ladies and gentlemen, on Border Haats draws attention to the transformational role of Border Haats in the management of India-Bangladesh border. And she stresses how the Haats have become a boon for the communities living close to the border. Her most interesting paper clarifies how India and Bangladesh indulge in a clear departure of sorts from more conservative measures in addressing border security challenges. Over to you, ma'am.
Joyeeta, you are on mute.
Joyeeta, you are not audible yet.
Now
Problem with the
audible.
microphone.
Now audible.
Yes. But not now. You are not audible.
Ma'am, can you please speak without the speaker? I mean the microphone. Can you please unplug the microphone? Yeah.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Here.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you, Kurtz, for giving me this opportunity to write this paper about Border Haat. And this is something I was always thinking, because border management has been my area, and I always try to look how the border management can really work. And almost all the discourses that we see in India-Bangladesh border for many years, it has been extremely security-centric. And it is always, we were saying it's very constraining, because when we are, on the one way, we are talking about friendship, we are talking about how to mend our relationship, build a better partnership, and share our dreams together. But again, we see this border, which is extremely constraining. It's fenced border, totally, I would say it's very militarized. So we were looking into the securitization from the border was seen from a very typical, strict sense of security. But India-Bangladesh border, it's a very different construct, because it is an artificial construct, as my previous speaker has also pointed out, that this border was created only in 1947. It's an people were coming. And it changed the entire socio-economic dynamics of that entire region. Once a very prosperous region, the eastern part of British India, which was known to be a very prosperous region, transformed to get totally after 1947, and then we see different and then barbed fencing coming in, because I, as a person who grew up in very close to in a border town, for us before 1980s, when we used to go to different places, for us there was not much difference between Bangladesh and India, except those small border pillars. And we used to have friends and everything. But now, when those barbed wires came in, actually we got the real idea of what it really means. For many people it was constraining, but for us it was the end of one territory. So it created a very different psychological, not only it created a very psychological perspective altogether, and it was very constraining. So you feel the moment you hit the border that, oh, with them we really can't make friendship, it's very different. And then with that border, the moment you constrain, it created a lot of other problems, and the fences also could not resolve the problems, because there was, the moment you hit, because the socio-economic dynamics changed so much that, so it really needed a different perspective to handle the border. And I think as the modern globalization came in and all, we had to think about a solution which was very out of the box. And end of the day, who we are talking about, it is the people that matters. So I think, and it is the people. So if any solution was necessary, we have to bring in the people, because the problems in the border areas, if we see whether it is illegal trade and all, because people had no livelihood, and all this livelihood, the challenges came because we created an artificial thing altogether. So here I think the Border Haat emerged as a very different opportunities, and it brings in, it breaks the so-called mindset of way of securitization of the border, and it brings in a new perspective which is very people-centric, and it really talks about the borderland. And when you talk about borderland, and it creates the opportunities, because in the Cut study, it actually showcases how the Border Haats, of course, the numbers are very small now, but even that that numbers have brought in the changes in the people together. And in this today's age, when we are talking about managing border, and we have realized the militaristic solutions can't be long-standing or sustainable. So we have to bring people, and Border Haat in that perspective really brings in that particular changing dimension altogether. Also, and it tries to look from a people-centric perspective, the livelihood change, because one of the major perspective of the border management has been, especially in India, also look into border area development. And border area development can be one side, understanding how the socio-cultural and socio-economic realities in that border zone, border areas exist. We really have to think about a development from the both sides together. And this is a very, and it really brings in a complete change. We see not only the cultural, I really liked my other speakers' emphasis on how the cultural perspectives and cultural aspect of the Border Haat. It is really a cultural aspect, because end of the day, if we really want a long, sustaining, peaceful border, we have to create the trust. And here, I think the Border Haat has been a very rightful way to develop that trust, the friendship, and people of the region actually looking into, because it's directly linked to their livelihood, and the livelihood can be sustained only when there is peaceful border and we don't create much of the problems. Here I can give you a very wonderful perspective of the Dauki, the Jaflong place, where the Jaflong River and in Dauki, where both side India and Bangladesh, the border is basically absolutely open, and their people are managing. It's the photographer, it's the normal vendors who are managing, who are taking in charge that there should not be any problem in that particular area. So this is and here it is, if we are talking about 21st century, we are talking about changing dimensions, and we should go together. It is certainly a new experiment, but the experiment is now the challenge lies how we can take forward this experience and we can make in a bigger perspectives. And here I think the Cuts international study is very, very helpful, and I think we should take this model together, not only in India, Bangladesh, but in other places also, because it is an era, and especially after the pandemic, we have realized that we have to work together hand in hand. And those way of strict, hard security measures and all, maybe to some extent, but we also have to look into the people. And this is a very very good effort, and government of, and I strongly feel that we should bring in more Border Haats in that region. The more we have Border Haats, I feel the people are more participating in the Border Haat, and it really creates a new dimension to the whole borders management. And we should use it in a better perspective, and this should be the proper, because military thing cannot go beyond certain point, and we have to take it forward. Also, when we are talking about friendship, we can't only one way we will talk about friendship and we will just continue with that security-centric mindset. It doesn't happen. So it is also important for our bilateral relationship to have those border together, and it is also when we are talking about, it is also creating a new zone of economics. To me, that whole area should be seen to be a zone of peace driven by economics. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We know that of the several commonalities that India shares with Bangladesh, one is the rich mangroves. I was talking about the commonalities that India shares with Bangladesh, and one is the rich mangroves that border the deltaic regions of West Bengal and Bangladesh. Now, we are aware of the positive impact of the mangroves on our ecosystems. But the reason I broached the issue of mangroves is not to go into any kind of discussion about geographical attributes of the region, but to basically remind ourselves that mangroves have a lot to do with breathing roots. And in view of all that has been extolled about Border Haats, I was wondering if we could not look at Border Haats as some sort of breathing roots of the inhabitants of our border regions. Throw light on how Border Haats may be resumed such that people's lives can continue to derive the advantages that we have mentioned about Border Haats, even in a time of pandemic. May I request Ms. Bijaya Rai of Cuts International to carry forward the discussion.
Good afternoon, everyone. So especially Indranil and other speakers have highlighted the benefits of Border Haats, so I'm not delving into that. But unfortunately, due to the pandemic, the Border Haats were closed for indefinite period from March 2020. So of course, it has resulted in dilution of some of the benefits those were accrued to the border residents. And we are apprehensive that not only it will drive few people to the below poverty line, because more than 200 people were directly or indirectly involved per Border Haat when earning from the Border Haat, and now they are unemployed. And Border Haat was also sourced for affordable products, especially spices, fruits and vegetables. Now they can procure that. And it will also result in out-migration, and perhaps also it will drive few people to get involved in informal trade because of lack of any employment opportunities or rise of the price of the food products. So given that we are arguing or advocating for is reopening the Border Haats, but not with compromising the health and hygiene of the participants. So to do that, we have suggested that few changes in the operational guidelines of the Border Haat. And the first one is regarding the number of vendees those are allowed to attend the Border Haat. So presently, regarding different haats, there are different guidelines. Some 300, in some more than 1,000. So it differs. So what we're suggesting is, say a batch of 200 or 100 people will be allowed to enter the Border Haat for a stipulated period of time. Then once they come out, there will be a sanitization procedure. Then after that, the next batch will enter. But unfortunately, because of this, the number of footfall will decrease. So it will have some impact on the income of the vendors. So to compensate that, what we have suggested is we can increase the number of days the haat is operating. Presently, as per the rule, only once a week the haat will operate. So it can be increased to 2 days. Secondly, the participants must be mandated that they wear masks and maintain proper distance. So for that, might be a few additional people need to be recruited to monitor that, which will again generate some kind of employment for the local people. then after that, we have to take care that now the people will mostly focus on buying essential products, because this prolonged lockdown and now the economic activities have also slowed down. So they will mostly focus on essential commodity. So the vendors, those were earlier selling those non-essential commodities, should be advised to shift to sell of essential commodities. And the Border Hat committee should also allow them to shift into this. Secondly, the Border Hat should be mainly focused on sell of the agricultural commodities and the fruits, so that it maintains stability of price on these products on both the side, because there is complementary which we have observed during our survey, and especially also the food security in the other way. And another thing which is very important in case of COVID is to maintain hand hygiene. So there must be adequate flow of running water in the washrooms and proper sanitation in the washrooms. Because when we were surveyed the Border Hearts, what we have observed is in most of the Border Hearts, the washrooms were not clean or either in dilapidated conditions, or they lack any kind of water. COVID. So what we can do is we can earmark some of the stalls for sale of face masks, sanitizers, soaps, and other products those are relevant to combat the COVID pandemic. So, and the women folks, those who are residing in the border areas, they can make those masks and sell in the Border Hearts, which will again generate some kind of additional income opportunities for them. So in this way, given the new scenario, the new normal scenario, the Border Hat can play a renewed role. So I believe that if we take these recommendations and reopen the Border Hat, then it will be better for the border region, as it will generate some kind of impact, as well as it will be able to combat the spread of virus due to which it was closed. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Bijaya, for those recommendations that you highlighted. I have already in the introductory part of my deliberation, I have recalled the very positive observations made by Honorable Member of Parliament, respected Shirin Akhter. It is now my pleasant duty at this juncture to request her to speak on the subject. Over to you, ma'am.
It's really, I'm very happy to be here and discussion with the cars friends and others also. Uh, we already discussed about the Border Heart for various many years, and it started with the Border Heart in some special ideas, I think. First is the relation between two countries. It is very important. Important thing is the trade between two countries. Third thing is the relation between people to people, connectivity between the people to people. And also there is very important role of diplomatic areas, a relationship between two countries. In Bangladesh, our experience for last few years, especially from my village, there is a Border Heart in Feni, Chagolnaya, Mohomaya Union. These areas, I have seen this, people are very happy with the Border Heart, especially the women, and who can see their relatives many years, after many years, and they can talk, they can enjoy their life, their experience between them. And also it is important what goods or things they want to buy from the other side of the country. It is also that just before starting the meeting, we are talking about Hilsha fish. Yes, it's very important, Hilsha fish. And same way, we love to take spices from India. So these things are also important. What really we need to consume there. And also it is important when we talk about the trade, it is very important how benefited I am. It is also the country. Is the country benefited by this or not? So it is a very crucial point in my area that all our people from our local market, they are saying that because of this border heart, we are really cannot sell our things in our areas, in our shops. So we need to close down the border heart. So this is a factor, this is a problem, this is also we should mention these things. How can we really resolve these problems? It is important to us. So I think when we talk about the border heart, especially people-to-people connectivity, how can we develop? And it is also how to look at to the country to other side, because in South Asian region, fundamentalism is a very important part of the politics and socio-culture event. So in this way, if we can really make a people-to-people connection and also government-to-government relationship with those things, we can really fight out the fundamentalist group and the mentalities and the psychological apathy. This we can really face this, and we can resolve these things also. In also when we talk about the border heart, it can make a one source of gathering, the socialization between these two countries. In some days when we say in Bangladesh, our 21st February and the language movement, the language day, our Independence Day and your Independence Day, those days we can make some cultural function, cultural event. By those, the cultural things we can exchange in both countries. That is also an opportunity from the border heart we have experienced last few years. And also the question of connectivity, from the areas, how far the other market. It is especially the women who are really who are benefited from the local market, and especially from the border heart. And the women also can go for trade in these areas with the small things, and they can come to the shop and they can do some business with local things. That is also one part how the women can empower themselves. So that is also an opportunity. And especially I want to say to India and Bangladesh border, it's a big border. So we cannot make every union have the border heart. It is not possible. But impact of border heart, how can we really share those things to other people in border areas? That is very important. So we should learn from border heart what really we achieve, and we can give this opportunity, give this message to other people who are living in the border area. And by those things, really we can develop our relationship between India and Bangladesh. And also, it is important for us, the border heart. If Bangladesh people are not benefited from the heart, it is not possible to remain open these things. So from Bangladesh side, and not only from Indian side, people should think about how much people from Bangladesh can benefit it more. That is also very important. So simultaneously discussing with both parties, both who are doing the trade, who are involving in the areas with the border heart, they should think about those things. If not, it may arise some problem. That problem may close down the border heart. So it is a very important point for me, not for me, for Bangladesh also. And another things I want to say, that is for the connectivity, it is also very important to make the road and also to make the easier to make the facility connectivity with the bus and other things, that people can go and see the what is really happening there. And someone is speaking about the tourist. Yes, and brother Enamul Haque may be talking about the tourism. Yes, tourism also very important. From in Bangladesh, in my areas, that from Chittagong sides and other sides, people have come to see the border art and the areas. So that is also we can think about by surrounding the border heart about the tourism system, and we can give the opportunity to those people. And lastly, I want to say to both areas, to the Bangladesh and India, it is important the bilateral relationship, relationship between government and government, between relationship between peoples to people. So sometimes government to government relationship maybe some problem may arise, but the people, if people to people connection is very strong, then there will be no problem. So we have to think about that. One is the socialization, one is the cultural aspect, and one is the social needs of this valuable border heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Uh, we have we are through with all the speakers and their initial presentations. May I request Bipul, now that he's back in our midst, to please take over proceedings from here.
Sorry, thank you, Indranil. Let me begin with by thanking all of you. I'm not going to take over the proceedings, but I'm going to make a couple of quick points. One is, I think Shirin in her presentation made a very, very important point. I mean, of course, everything that she has said, they are important, but I would like to underline one very, very important point that she has made. That some local shopkeepers in those areas, in the vicinity of border huts, they are facing certain problems about their fall in their sale as a result of border hut. Of course, it is we need to make a note of it, and in our future field work, we need to see that how this causal relationship, whether it is there or it's for other reasons or not. But this is something which is important for all of us to make note of. For the simple reason that, of course, we know that people have benefited from border huts. And I can assure Shirin that people from both sides of the border have benefited, and our study has clearly shown and how much benefit that the people have. Problem of globalization as well, that we tend to focus everything, our effort, into those who have benefited and showcase those. but we tend to forget the losers. But we should not do, and that is one of the reasons why there is so much of backlash against globalization. So one straightforward answer to this issue is that once the economy grows, everybody is expected to be benefited. Once the size of the economy grows, I'm talking about that very local economy. Secondly, we also keep in mind that as a result of border hut, now local consumers, they have a choice. So I think they have benefited much more than other stakeholders. So we need to see, we need to balance all these things in order to take forward this initiative. The second point which I would like to underline is what said Manawar Hussain he has made, and I would request Dr. Haque also some light on his point, that he has made a proposal that we have a number of rivers, I mean transboundary rivers, which we share between India and Bangladesh. If I may recall, if I'm not mistaken, there are 54 transboundary rivers between these two countries. Why don't we start talking about or advocating about, at least on a pilot basis, a border hut on the river, some kind of a floating market, or we can think about, let's say, in 1 week on one side of the river, the other week on the other side of the river, something like that. So that people of both region, I mean, we have to already started working on that as part of our work on rivers in South Asia, and of course,
Hello.
He's not heard.
sorry. Yeah, carry on. Carry on, Indranil.
Okay,
Today
thank
internet
you.
here is very, very
Yes,
bad.
yes. Thank you, Bipul. May I now request Uday to come in with whatever points and interventions he has in mind. Please, Uday.
Thank you, Indranil. I'll keep my video off because of bandwidth issues. Am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sure. I just had two questions. One for Professor Haque, and I just for a minute wanted to focus on from the border heart from a gender perspective. And I think what is also evident is that when it comes to women's participation in cross-border trade, it's quite minuscule. And it is also quite constrained by huge information deficit, when it comes to regulations and procedures. And, one sees little incentive in engaging in cross-border commerce. So wanted your views on this challenge and how can one overcome this? That's my first question to Professor Haque. My second question is to Mrs. Shirin Akhter. One also views Border Hearts as a platform at the grassroots level, where the bilateral relations between India and Bangladesh can also be further cemented. Request your views on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Uday. Dr. Haque, will you please take the question that Uday raised first?
Thank you. I think if you look into the gender issues in particular, a lot of the participants in the border hearts are also women, And it's the small, because remember, it's at the moment once in a week, uh, which means it's not a full-time job for the people who are there. So women are one of the biggest beneficiary of it. That is one. The other issue that if you look into this, what was the second question, Uday? I think there was an interesting question. Trying to remember that.
I think
to
the
write it down.
second.
Second.
Right. No, my second, the question was regarding the fact that there is a lot of information deficit, when it comes to rules and regulation and procedures, when it, at time of engaging on cross-border commerce. So how can one overcome those challenges?
Thank you. I think the rules and regulation, you have to, either if you follow the stricter rules, which will be very difficult, but it is through convention you actually overrule it. So in other words, as you look into the border, I think the stricter you rule you maintain, you are making formal, like a very, very formal movement, which is impossible for that. So you should build the border hard based on that trust factor. The only people who are allowed there, the regulation is within the locality, within certain kilometers of people are engaged in there. And that, I would not argue for a formal regulatory barriers, because that will actually isolate the marginalized people. I would rather stay with the idea that, look, this border hut is not for the big traders. It is for the benefit of the local people. So the only regulation you want is the local people to exchange goods and services. Service exchange is also important, because we went to the border huts and we realized in some cases you need medicine and there is no medicine shop nearby. You need a doctor service. So there are certain services that you can actually provide to the border huts. So I would not strongly argue for a very strong border control on that. Rather than I would say, look, the only control that you need is the local people to use this border hut for their own benefit, for trading goods and services. The rest of the people will benefit from the secondary impact, not direct participant in that. I think that is the concept at the moment. Otherwise, it will open up the controversy on formal trade versus trade diversions. So all the other issues will come in. And that is how I see things to proceed. So that.
Thank you.
May I just come in here? Hello?
Yes, please.
Joyeeta, please.
Yes, please.
Just I wanted to mention here that the idea of border trade, one of the intention was to, one way to handle the informal economy. So a lot of informal trade that was going on, and which was creating a lot of other border management challenges. So that was the reason, one of the reason to bring in border huts, so that which is informal, the people can do it in a much more in a legalized way. That's why there should not be a lot of paperwork and other things that, because, and it was totally looking into the grassroots. So I would strongly argue that we should keep the border hut from a trading perspective as paper free as possible. That should be the focus, because it is touching the grassroots. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may come in, we have a number of questions which are coming through the chat box. Questions or comments or observations. Sriradha from Vivekananda International Foundation, she has made a couple of very important points, that while everything is good, but there are two broad issues. One is about on country of origin. Still we are seeing that third country origin goods, and second is security issues. Now, I think on security issues, let me deal with that first. I think from our study, we have clearly established the fact that crime rates have come down, or rather crime has come down in those areas. Our border huts are there. And we had extensive discussion both with Border Security Force of India and Border Guard Bangladesh, and they are quite happy. They have in fact endorsed our point of view that as a result of border hut, local crime has come down. But yes, the largest security issues are there. But since we have visited those places, all border huts which are functional at the moment, we have found that security is quite adequate. And we should not, I mean, broadly speaking, we should not look at this initiative from security prism. We should look at this initiative uh, from people to people connect, not just in terms of trade or volume of trade or value of trade, but more in terms of people to people socio-cultural connect. I'm not at all saying for a minute that security is not important. Of course, it is important, but that should not be the all or end all. On the the other point about country of origin of goods, it is true that the idea is to encourage trade in local products among local consumers. But at the same time, in all border huts, we have seen that there are products which are not locally produced. In fact, we have seen products which have come from other countries. But see, here is a classic example of mismatch between consumer demand and availability. Since those products are not available, and at the same time, there is demand for those products. And then demand is increasing and is going to increase as a result of all these new communication platforms, television advertisements and things like that. So on the one hand, there is demand for such product. On the other hand, there is no supply at the local level. So if those products can come to, and traders are very clever. I mean, they know that there is demand. They know that there is no supplies. So they are procuring them from other places and selling them. I don't see much of an issue there, except that we need to also keep in mind the volume. It should not be very large volume. And our argument should not be in the basis of how much tariff that we are losing as a result of that. It's minuscule actually. So that should not be the argument that we should put forward. I'll stop with one example. There is this water purifier. We have seen it in Balat, Border Hat in Meghalaya. So there is the demand for that product among the local villagers, but that is not available. The nearest place from Balat, where that water purifier is available, is Shillong, which takes you at least 8 to 10 hours of journey to and fro. And also the cost. See, if you can get that product in a border hut without spending much time on journey, time and cost, at the same time at a lesser cost of the product itself, then naturally there's going to be a demand and supply for such a product. So we need to look into all these things from a larger perspective rather than narrow theoretical economics which we have studied. And some of us like me, and good, it is good, those who have forgotten those theoretical economics. Thank you.
Bipulda, I have a question with you.
Yes, Appa.
হ্যাঁ ভালো আছেন?
হ্যাঁ, দাঁড়িয়ে রাখছি।
হ্যাঁ, তা তো দেখতেই পাচ্ছি। আচ্ছা, the question is very important on that I have already discussed about that you cannot establish in total area of the border heart, but can you take some few examples, successful example from border heart, and that you can disseminate to other areas which the border but no border heart, that can take experience, and then by those we can really change our mind to our other country people.
Yeah, it is exactly what we are doing. See, there are 4 border huts which are operational. 6 more are about to be operational. Infrastructure facilities are being developed. And then there are a number of other locations which have been identified for border huts. I don't exactly remember the number, but the number is quite high. So what we are doing, and as part of this project, is that we are preparing a short video showing the benefits as well as challenges of this initiative. And not only that, we are going to take that video to those places. We have already done the field work in those other locations where border huts are coming up. And also in I would say, third set of locations where border huts are possible. Locations have been identified, but they have not yet been approved or sanctioned. And we found that people are very, very enthusiastic about this initiative. So we're going to take this video. So this was part of our field work, and we have already documented case studies, through case studies.
We can share also those video.
Absolutely.
We can
Absolutely,
share.
We can take that video to various locations. And one thing which Arnav, I think we need to do is that it's not just sufficient to do this kind of webinars or writing articles in newspapers or even doing videography. We have to also do small snippets of stakeholders on the ground, actual beneficiaries, to talk about their experience about this initiative, their involvement with this initiative. And also you have to think about, and this is where the role of our partner Unnayan will come, including Dr. Haque and Shirin and other experts, about to write about this initiative in Bengali language, because we have found that even after the existence of this border huts over the last several years, even people at the higher level of bureaucracy in Bangladesh, and also in India, they are not that aware of this initiative. So you have to write in Bengali language and also talk to, maybe we can do a specific separate meeting with the parliamentarians of those areas, border areas,
Yes.
both from Bangladesh and India, and talk about this initiative. That is how I think we can generate more awareness about this initiative. And I would request my colleagues, Arnav, Indranil, others, think about this and see how we can do it. And also request them to, if they have any other suggestions, other thoughts on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello, can I tell something on the issues of border hut?
Yes,
yes, please.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Actually, to me, in our country, while we are actually in the boyhood talking about the marriage of our girls to the border area people, there was always this question that yes, they are the smugglers. Why you are giving your daughters to them? So no one actually wanted to have any relationship with the people who are actually in the border areas. But situation has changed now. And though I was actually involved with the establishment of border huts from the very primary period, at this end actually I will just point out some issues that can actually move the border hut to a new height. The border hut as a growth center, I think there are increased due to their incomes. And due to the economic activities, new demands of products has been generated there. And the people around the border huts are capacitated. Now, if we can actually have a survey or a study, what are the demands of any new products on both sides that can be produced there and then can be marketed, so that the factors locally available can be added to values. Now, if we provide even some skills to the local people to produce these demanded products and also provide them to access to the credits either by the NGOs or by the local self-governments of these areas, I think that will actually give a actually boost to the peoples around the border hut. And this really, these border huts will grow, as I visioned, that will be the actually growth centers in the future days when connectivity like the EU will be established in this area. So I will request if it can be actually done something to have stock taken that what new products are actually demanded now, what are the factors available to actually process and to produce new products, and to provide some skills and access to the credits to the local people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think there is a particular question which Uday has raised. He would like a response to the problem of migration. I think, Arnab, our study on border huts, would you like to respond to that, the betel nut trade, which really captured this issue?
Yeah. Thanks, Indranil. Just to, I would like to flag 2-3 points here. Starting with what Uday suggested, like how it has created employment at the local level, and how it has its impact on outmigration. So what we found is there has been evidences, and that has been captured in the research report, that people have in fact come back to their villages, especially in India, where they are now working either as a vendor or as a helper in the border huts. That's one part. The second part, I would like to touch upon what Mr. Roy was saying on the viewing these border huts as growth centers, identifying commodities and all. So what we did in this study is we had identified certain products for which there exists the potential for establishing cross-border value chains. And this is exactly what Indranil was pointing out on the betel nut trade. If you look at the Kalaichor Baliamari border hut in Garo Hills, what we found is the raw betel nut grown on the Indian side, they are exported to, or rather traded to Bangladesh via the border huts. Now, on the Bangladesh side, these betel nuts, the raw betel nuts, they are dried, peeled off, and sent back to India for the consumption. Now the product that is coming on the Indian side, those are being bought by traders in Mankachar and many other areas. Now, a lot of people are involved in this buying and selling, carrying these to the trucks that are standing there. So as a whole, these kind of value chains exist. We are trying to identify them under this project. In fact, in the report, we had also highlighted, certain commodities that has the potential that needs to be, traded through border huts, which can actually lead to a further reduction in informal trade. And my third point would be on gender. What Dr. Haque and Shirin Appa, they were pointing out, the woman participation, it also has a lot to do with the socio-cultural, framework of the region where these huts are they're existing. For example, if you look at Balat, women there, it's a matrilineal society and women are more empowered. So they participate compared to orthodox the societies that exist on on the Bangladesh side as well as in the Tripura side. So that is also it also has a lot of impact on women participation. We of course we will be having the successive webinars each focus on each of these issues, but I'd rather stop here presently. Thanks, Indranil. Hello.
Yes, thank you, Arnob. We are almost on the verge of conclusion of this session because we are past the allotted time. Would there be any other intervention from the floor? Otherwise, we are in a position to conclude the session. All right, but we are always open to your questions and interventions. We are always open to your questions and interventions, and we will keep enriching our understanding and our treatment of the whole subject as we proceed. May I now therefore conclude by wishing all of you a very good evening, and once again thanking all the panelists and the participants for participating with such involvement.